Okay, so for lesson 5.5, this is called the difference of two squares. And this is going to be our first exposure into factoring polynomials. The difference of two squares is the two numbers in our problem are going to be perfect squares. And what I mean by a perfect square is I mean numbers like 1 times 1, 2 times 2, 3 times 3, 4 times 4, 5 times 5, and so on. You really should memorize all of these up to 20. Now, you've probably already memorized them from 3rd grade because you had to memorize your times tables. So everybody should know all the way up to 12 times 12 by now. So then it would just be a matter of memorizing 13 times 13, 14 times 14. Now, you may even get numbers that you're going to see when we're going to have to factor that are bigger than 20. But up to 20 is a good start. Now, the first part of the homework is the same thing that we just learned. You're just going to be foiling. It says to find each product. But if you notice, in this little gray area, they've got this little hint here. When we go to factor our difference of two squares, what's going to happen is the two binomials that are created are going to have exactly the same letter and number, except for one will have an addition sign and the second will have a subtraction sign. Because when I FOIL these, the middle term, that outer and inner, is going to cancel away. So for example, the first example, it's asking you to multiply x plus 3 and x minus 3. Watch what happens when I apply FOIL to these. When I do first, I get x squared. When I apply the outer, I get negative 3x. And then the inside gives me positive 3x. And then the last gives me negative 9. When I go to combine my middle term, notice it's negative 3 plus 3. So this will cancel, it gives 0x. So then my final answer here is x squared minus 9. So in the beginning part of the homework, this is what we're doing. We're just going to FOIL it to show the pattern that it creates. Now, both of the terms in my new answer here are both perfect squares. 9 is a perfect square because you can get to it by multiplying 3 times 3. The number in front of x squared is an assumed 1, and we know that 1 is also a perfect square because it's 1 times 1. So now, at the beginning of the homework, you're going to get problems like this, which is what we just learned. Later on in the homework, they're going to give you this, and they're going to ask you to turn it into this. So they're going to first ask you to multiply, but then they're going to ask you to undo the multiplication, and they're going to ask you to factor it. So what you're going to do is you're going to look at these two numbers. If they're perfect squares, the fastest way to do it is to find the square root of each of them. So the square root of 1 is 1x, or of 1x squared is x. The square root of 9 is 3. And then you make 1 plus, 1 minus. Let's try another one where they're asking us to factor it. Word difference in the name of the title here. The word difference means subtraction. So all of the problems that they're going to ask us to factor will be a subtraction sign. If there's an addition sign in between the two numbers, we will not be able to factor it. And I'll talk about this more on Monday, but I just wanted to give you a little peek into this lesson. So here, notice if you recognize that 49 is a perfect square, and so is z squared. When you go to factor this, z squared minus 49, you would square root them. The square root of z squared is just the z. The square root of 49 is 7. And you'll put one with a plus sign and one with a minus sign. For part B, if you did 16 minus 9x squared, 4 times 4 gives me 16. And 3 times 3 gives me 9. So I make one with a plus sign and one with a minus sign. And the way that you're going to check your answers is you're going to FOIL these. If it doesn't go back to this, then you factored it incorrectly. So this is just a quick peek into what we're going to do on Monday, because this is on your quiz on Tuesday. So I just wanted to give you a little introduction. I am going to teach it again, but just to start memorizing those perfect squares up to 20, so that way when you look at your problem, you'll be able to recognize if the numbers in the problem are perfect squares or not. Also, the key thing about this lesson is